My life is interesting only if it's related to psychoanalysis. Sigmund Freud was born in 1856 and died in 1939. He is known as the father of psychoanalysis. He was a physiologist, medical doctor in early 20th century. He established the psychosexual stages, theory of the unconscious mind, personality theory, and the defense mechanism. These theories are all interconnected. But before we get into that, let's talk about his life.
Sigmund was born in Freiburg, Austria, but was raised in Vienna from the age of 4 and onwards. He was the firstborn to a Jewish family. He had 9 siblings, and 2 of which were from his father's first marriage. He received his medical degree in 1881 from the University of Vienna. After graduation, he set up a private practice treating numerous psychological disorders. Sigmund considered himself a scientist first and foremost rather than a doctor. His initiative was to understand the journey of human knowledge and experience. In the Victoria era, where Freud was from, women were held to a social standard where they were supposed to wear certain types of clothing that made them seem more conservative. In this case, from the Victoria era, women were to repress their sexual needs. This led to a case of neurotic illness. This just means that overall, their behavior towards others was at a norm, but deep down inside, they were in distress. He wanted to understand what was going on inside of their heads, which led to Freud fabricating the psychosexual stages.
The first stage is the oral stage. The main pleasure of focus is the mouth, such as sucking, teething, etc. It starts from birth to 18 months. The child is nurtured and is then given that psychological pleasure of being cared for. In the future, if a need isn't met, when he or she is an adult, they are likely to develop the habit of biting on things such as pencils, nails, straws, etc. The second stage is the anal stage. The main focus of pleasure is the anus and bodily functions. It begins from 18 months to 3 years old. When the child begins to toilet train, the parents may cause too much pressure on the child. This may result in either being too clean or very messy in the future. The third stage is the phallic stage. The main focus of pleasure is the genitalia. It begins from 3 years old to 6 years old. Boys experience the Oedipal complex, while the girls experience the Electra complex. This is when children develop sexual desire for the parents of the opposite sex. As a result, children in the future may masturbate. The fourth stage is the latency stage. The main focus of pleasure is outside of the family. It begins from 6 years old to 11 years old. Same-sex friendships, athletics, and school are their main focus. The fifth stage is the genital stage. The main focus of pleasure is in sexual intercourse. It begins from 12 years old and onwards. They have strong interest in the opposite sex, and it's a time where their libido gets redeveloped. If this stage is successful, they will end up as a well-balanced person in the future.
In order to understand the personality and how it develops, Sigmund fabricated the psychosexual stages. But that's only a fifth of his overall theory. In order to completely understand the personality, he needed to understand the unconscious mind and the conscious mind. The conscious mind consists of 3 stages, and those are called id, ego, and superego.
Freud came to the conclusion and theory that children are biologically born with id and plays an extremely significant role in the human life and psyche. As infants, it is important to have their needs and wants met due to the simple fact that they are not capable of taking tasks upon themselves. The id is a substitute to play the role of verbal skills as an infant, since they are completely relying on the caregiver to provide for them. For example, it isn't expressed instantaneously and unconsciously. Therefore, when an infant is required to have their diaper changed, the initial reaction is for them to cry and feel irritated, and that's a subliminal notification that the infant is not happy. When it is taking place or put into initiative, it's done in a complete selfish manner without the consideration of others' feelings, consequences, as well as not acknowledging reality. As an infant grows out of the id stage, they start to form the ego, and this usually occurs at the age of 3 years old. The ego is tweaked and adjusted form of the id that the child faces as they grow and gradually interact with society and being able to control the wants and needs of the id by making a reasonable balance of the two. Making decisions now becomes a form of not only thinking about themselves, but also the repercussions that come into play. Therefore, the ego's intentions is to satisfy the id without causing a tremendous backlash. Superego is developed from ages 3 to 5 years old and is formed with the help of those in the child's life on a daily basis or have the most impact on them. For instance, the parents or the caregivers of this child. This is usually developed by the time the child reaches a phallic stage and learns how to put morals and values into play, which then makes the child feel uplifted, accomplished, and behaved within society. This is considered ideal self. For the conscious, it establishes control, determining the child's ability from right and wrong.
When Sigmund Freud was at the age of 8, he intentionally urinated in his parents' bedroom. His father put him in a position of inferiority by scolding and humiliating him. "There will come nothing of this boy." This deeply affected him because after the event, he would often dream about this event falling by his works and success. He interpreted his dream as retaliation to that traumatic moment against his father and his becoming of success. Though Sigmund Freud was a brilliant, unique theorist, he was strongly inspired by numerous aspects, which connected together to develop his thoughts. When his father passed away, he suffered from an emotional crisis, which led him to experience a series of dreams that gave him the motivation to his self-analysis and the development of his greatest masterpiece, the interpretation of dreams. This study has showed him that the love and admiration he felt for his father were mixed with very conflicting feelings of hatred and dishonor. Freud revealed that when he was in his youth, he had wished that his half-brother Philip, who was the same age as his mother, was really his father. This, along with other signs, also persuaded him to believe this fantasy to the point when he wished his real father dead because he was his rival for his mother's affection. This was the basis for his theory of the Oedipus complex.
The book Interpretation of Dreams, written by Freud, is based on his theory of the unconscious. According to Stephen Thornton of University of Limerick in Ireland, Sigmund Freud insisted on treating this theory as behavior for which it is meaningful to seek an explanation by searching for causes in terms of the mental states of individual concerned. As stated in The Conscious and Unconscious Mind, The Structure of the Mind According to Freud by Kendra Cherry, the unconscious mind is a reservoir of feeling, thoughts, urges, and memories that are outside of our conscious awareness. Most of the contents of the unconscious are unacceptable or unpleasant, such as feelings of pain, anxiety, or conflict. As per Freud, the unconscious continues to influence our behavior and experience, even though we are unaware of these underlying influences. Sigmund Freud also said that it is in the unconscious mind's biological nature to desire sex and aggression. A person's feelings, choices, and purposes from the unconscious are affected by their past experiences. Furthermore, a person is aware of what is going on in the conscious mind, while the unconscious mind is not aware of different kinds of thoughts that are too aggressive to recognize.
According to Sigmund Freud, everything we do is merely driven from two drives: sex and aggression. Sex is our drive to prosper, live, and produce offspring. Aggression is our need to stay alive, avoid threats to our existence, power, and prosperity. The ego's job is to satisfy the id's impulses, not to offend the morale of the superego, and to take into consideration the reality of the situation. Think of it this way: the id as the devil on your shoulder, and the ego being the angel on your shoulder. This concept is to have either one nor the other more powerful. We talk and listen to the two perspectives before making a decision. The decision made is the ego, which is looking for that healthy balance. Ego defense mechanisms, or defenses, is a tool the ego uses as a mediator to help defend the ego when it has a challenging time satisfying both the id and the superego with a healthy balance. When this happens, it will use one or more of these defenses. The main ones are summarized here. Wow, wow.